Most people spend their entire lives chasing approval, needing to be seen, needing to be loved, needing someone to tell them who they are. But Buddhism teaches a brutal truth. The moment you stop needing people, your suffering collapses, and your life finally begins. You don't become cold. You don't become distant. You simply return to the one person you were meant to rely on, your own awakened mind. Today, you'll learn 7 Buddhist lessons that show you how to break emotional dependence and find a happiness that nobody can take from you. 1. The first lesson: attachment is the root of suffering. Every time you need someone to validate you, you hand them the keys to your peace. From a Buddhist perspective, this need is not love. It's attachment wearing a friendly mask. It feels comforting at first, but slowly it becomes the chain that controls your emotions. Buddhism explains attachment as the mind's desperate attempt to hold on to what is changing. People change, feelings change, relationships shift, situations evolve, but the attached mind refuses to accept this reality. It tries to freeze people in place and demands that they behave exactly how we want, so we can feel secure. This is why attachment hurts. It's based on fear, not wisdom. We cling to people because we fear emptiness, silence, and the unknown. We fear being alone with our thoughts. We fear discovering parts of ourselves we haven't healed, so we use people as emotional shields, hoping they protect us from our own inner world. But that's an illusion. No one can carry your inner burdens for you. Attachment becomes a prison when your happiness depends on how someone else treats you. If they text you back, you're happy. If they don't, you fall apart. If they stay close, you feel safe. If they pull away, you panic. Your peace becomes unstable because it sits in someone else's hands. But here's the shift. The moment you loosen your grip even slightly, the suffering begins to fade. Because you're not losing people. You're losing the belief that you need them to be whole. And that's where real freedom starts. When you allow people to be who they are, and allow yourself to stand without depending on their presence, approval, or attention. The Buddha's teaching here is simple. Love people, but don't cling to them. Care for them, but don't collapse without them. Walk with them, but don't let your happiness be held hostage by them. When you stop needing people to fill your inner emptiness, you discover something powerful. You were never empty to begin with. 2. The second lesson: craving creates dependence. Craving is one of the most overlooked forces in human suffering. Most people think they suffer because of relationships, disappointments, or the behavior of others. But Buddhism takes a razor-sharp view. You do not suffer because of people, you suffer because of your craving for them. Craving is the inner voice that whispers, "I cannot be whole unless this person gives me something." Sometimes that something is attention. Sometimes it's reassurance. Sometimes it's affection, validation, praise, or emotional closeness. Whatever form it takes, the message is always the same. I am incomplete. Someone outside of me must fix that. This is the root of emotional dependence. And as long as craving drives your relationships, you will always feel anxious, insecure, or afraid of losing someone. Not because they're doing anything wrong, but because your inner balance depends on their actions. Craving isn't love. It's a survival strategy created by an untrained mind. You chase people because you're chasing peace. You want connection because you think connection will save you from yourself. You depend on others because you haven't yet learned how to depend on your own inner clarity. But craving never truly satisfies. It gives you a temporary high followed by a long collapse. It builds hope, only to dissolve into disappointment. It promises completion, but delivers dependency. Buddhism teaches that craving operates in 3 toxic cycles that trap you. You crave. 2. You cling. 3. You suffer. Then you repeat it again and again. Let's break each part down in simple human language. First, you crave. Something inside you feels missing, so you want a person to fill it. You want their presence, their words, their attention, their affection. You start believing that if they choose me, I'll feel worthy, or if they stay close, I'll feel safe. This is the mind searching outward instead of inward. It's the illusion that happiness is somewhere out there, waiting to be found in another person. Second, you cling. Once craving identifies someone as the source of comfort, you tighten your grip. You become scared of losing them. You want them to behave in predictable, comforting ways. You want them to reassure you, respond to you, choose you, and prioritize you. Clinging isn't love. It's fear disguised as affection. You're not attaching to the person, you're attaching to what they represent. Safety, attention, rescue, distraction, self-worth. But people change. Their moods change. Their priorities shift. Their availability fluctuates. Clinging tries to fight this reality, and that creates tension inside you. Third, you suffer. Whenever they don't meet your expectations, or even the expectations you never said out loud, you fall into disappointment. Your mind becomes unstable. You start imagining worst-case scenarios. You feel abandoned, rejected, ignored, or unimportant. But the suffering did not come from the person. It came from the craving behind your attachment. If there is no craving, there is no dependency. If there is no dependency, there is no emotional collapse. This is the Buddhist formula for freedom. The moment you understand that your suffering is born from your craving, you regain your power. You stop blaming people for not behaving the way you want. You stop trying to control what you cannot control, and you start recognizing the real issue, the restless, craving mind inside you. Here's the truth. People don't disappoint you, your expectations do. People don't hurt you, your dependency on them does. People don't break your peace, your craving for them to be a certain way does. And the deeper your craving, the sharper your suffering. Buddhism doesn't tell you to stop loving people. It teaches you to stop craving them. Love is natural. Love is fluid. Love is grounded in appreciation and presence. Craving is gripping. Craving is needy. Craving is built on fear and illusion. When love mixes with craving, relationships become unstable. You start needing constant signs that someone cares. You feel worried when they're distant. You panic when they're busy. You take their silence personally. You read too deeply into everything they say or don't say. This is not because you are weak. It's because no one ever taught you how craving works. When the mind craves, it becomes a beggar. When the mind is free from craving, it becomes a master. Buddhist practice teaches you to turn inward, not to disconnect from people, but to connect with yourself first. When you see the impermanence of people, their changes, their unpredictability, their shifting emotions, you stop demanding consistency from what is naturally inconsistent. You let people be human. You let relationships flow. You let connections breathe. You realize you cannot force someone to stay, love, respond, or heal you, and you stop needing them to. The moment craving fades, relationships become healthier. You enjoy people without grasping. You love without fear. You care without losing yourself. You connect without collapsing your identity into someone else's behavior. When craving disappears, something incredible happens. You discover that peace was never supposed to come from others. It was supposed to come from your own awareness. This is the Buddhist definition of emotional independence. Not isolation, not withdrawal, not coldness, but a quiet inner strength that doesn't rely on anyone to stay steady. When you stop craving people, you stop chasing them. When you stop chasing them, you stop losing yourself. And when you stop losing yourself, you start discovering who you truly are. This is why the Buddha taught that craving is the origin of suffering, and the release of craving is the beginning of freedom. 3. The third lesson: solitude is a teacher, not a punishment. Most people run from solitude as if it's a threat. They treat being alone like something is wrong, like it means they've failed socially or emotionally. But Buddhism flips this entire idea upside down. From a spiritual perspective, solitude is not a punishment. It's the most honest mirror you will ever face in your life. The reason people fear being alone is simple. When the world becomes quiet, the mind becomes loud. And most people are terrified of hearing their own thoughts. They would rather distract themselves with constant company, constant noise, constant interaction, and constant validation than sit with what is actually happening inside them. But this is exactly why solitude is powerful. It exposes all the inner things you've been avoiding. In solitude, you notice how restless your mind becomes, how it jumps from one thought to another, how it worries, imagines, exaggerates, fears, and judges, how it tries to escape the present moment by looking for stimulation. This restlessness is why so many people cling to others. They think people will quiet their inner noise. They think companionship will distract them from their anxiety. They think affection will soften their uneasiness. But the truth is, if you cannot sit with your own mind, you will bring that restlessness into every relationship you have. Solitude isn't scary. Facing your untrained mind is. And this is exactly why solitude is a teacher. It forces you into direct contact with the part of yourself you keep postponing. When you stay in solitude long enough without running away, without numbing yourself with entertainment, and without begging for company, you start to see something important. The mind is chaotic because it has never been trained. It's not evil. It's not broken. It's just untamed. Like a flame without a lamp, it flickers everywhere. Like a wild animal, it reacts without awareness. Like a river in a storm, it moves without direction. Solitude teaches you this by showing you your mind exactly as it is: raw, unfiltered, unpolished. And that's the beginning of inner growth. Because once you see your mind, you can work with it. The Buddha often went into solitude, not because he was avoiding people, but because he understood a basic truth. You cannot hear your own wisdom when you're drowning in noise. When you are always surrounded by people, you unconsciously adapt to them. You take on their emotions, their energy, their expectations, their pace. You lose your own rhythm. You lose your clarity. You lose your grounding. Solitude brings you back to yourself. It sharpens your awareness. It strengthens your emotional independence. It helps you see what you truly want, not what others want from you. And the more you experience this, the more you understand that solitude is not about being without others. It's about being with yourself fully. People often confuse solitude with loneliness, but they are not the same. Loneliness is the fear of being alone. Solitude is the freedom of being alone. Loneliness says, "Nobody is here, so I am empty." Solitude says, "I am here, and that is enough." When you learn solitude, you learn to enjoy your own presence. You learn to appreciate quiet. You learn to feel at home in your own company. You learn to let thoughts come and go without panicking. And something remarkable happens. You stop needing others to escape yourself. You stop entering relationships just to fill a void. You stop clinging to people out of fear. Instead, you begin to choose people from a place of fullness, not desperation. Solitude trains you to see that your peace is yours. Your center is yours. Your stability is yours. Your identity is yours. So when someone enters your life, you're not asking them to carry your inner world. You're not expecting them to fix your moods or hold your insecurities. You're no longer dependent on their presence to feel whole. You become someone who shares their life, not someone who hands over their life. And people feel this difference. When you are comfortable in solitude, your energy becomes calm, steady, grounded. You're not clingy, you're not demanding, you're not desperate. You're present. This is why solitude actually improves your relationships. It strengthens your ability to love without fear. It teaches you how to be with someone without losing yourself. When you know how to stand alone, you stop collapsing when someone steps away. You stop panicking when someone needs space. You stop assuming every distance means rejection. You understand that people need their own solitude too, and you don't take it personally. This is the maturity solitude brings. You stop clinging to people because you no longer cling to your fears. Many Buddhist masters say that solitude is the foundation of wisdom, not because isolation is necessary, but because clarity requires quiet. You cannot know who you are when your mind is always reacting to others. You cannot discover your truth when you're constantly adjusting to someone else's expectations. You cannot find inner peace if you're never willing to sit in silence with your own heart. Solitude is where the inner journey begins. At first, it feels uncomfortable. The silence feels heavy. Your thoughts feel overwhelming. Your emotions rise to the surface. But slowly, the storm calms. The mind softens. Your breathing slows. Your body unwinds. And you begin to sense something you've ignored your entire life. Peace is not outside you. It is waiting for you underneath the noise. And the more you return to solitude, the more you grow in clarity, strength, and emotional independence. You stop needing people to fill your emptiness because you realize the emptiness was never a flaw, it was space. And space is where understanding grows, where wisdom rises, where peace lives. Solitude doesn't take anything from you. It gives you everything you've been looking for in others, but from the one place that can't be taken away, your own awakened mind. 4. The fourth lesson, you are responsible for your own peace. One of the most direct, uncompromising teachings in Buddhism is that your inner peace is your responsibility, not your partner's, not your family's, not your friends', not the world's. Most people spend their lives trying to rearrange external situations so they can feel calm inside. But the Buddha taught that this is like trying to stop the wind by holding your hands out. The world is unpredictable, people are inconsistent, and circumstances constantly change. If your peace depends on any of these shifting conditions, your peace will always be unstable. The problem is that from childhood, most people are conditioned to believe that their emotions are reactions caused by others. He made me mad. She hurt my feelings. They stressed me out. This mindset creates a lifetime of emotional slavery. If someone else is the cause of your emotions, then someone else must also be the solution. You end up waiting for people to apologize, change, reassure you, or behave the way you want before you can settle down and regain balance. Buddhism exposes the flaw in this approach. The moment you hand your emotional state to another person, you give them the power to control your inner world. This is the foundation of suffering. Taking responsibility for your peace does not mean ignoring what others do. It means refusing to let their behavior dictate your inner climate. People will sometimes disappoint you, misunderstand you, forget you, get distracted, speak without thinking, or carry their own pain in ways that spill over onto you. If you rely on them to always behave perfectly so you can feel okay, you will never feel okay for long. The Buddhist approach is to recognize that your reaction, not their action, is the source of your disturbance. Two people can face the same situation and have completely different internal experiences. This reveals that the cause is not the outside world itself, but the state of the mind interacting with it. When you truly understand this, you stop chasing emotional stability from external sources. You stop expecting others to say the right words at the right moments. You stop demanding that people rescue you from your own fears or insecurities. Instead, you begin to pay attention to what is happening inside you whenever something triggers discomfort. You observe your irritation, your disappointment, your jealousy, your hurt, your expectations, and your reactions without trying to blame anyone for them. This internal observation is how Buddhist practice cultivates emotional freedom. Responsibility is not burdensome, it is liberating. It means that your peace is no longer a fragile object that depends on how someone else behaves. You learn that even if someone is rude to you, you can choose patience. If someone distances themselves, you can choose clarity instead of panic. If someone rejects you, you can choose self-understanding instead of self-destruction. If someone misunderstands you, you can choose calm instead of argument. The power is not in controlling them. The power is in understanding yourself. This shift transforms the way you interact with others. You no longer cling to them to stabilize your emotions. You no longer expect them to heal the wounds that you haven't faced. You no longer let their unpredictable moods shake your ground. You stop entering relationships out of fear, out of loneliness, out of emptiness, or out of the need to be rescued. You begin to relate from a place of fullness and clarity because your inner balance is not something someone gave you, it is something you built. Buddhism teaches that everything and everyone is impermanent. People will come and go, feelings will rise and fall, roles will shift, connections will evolve. When you build your peace on impermanent things, peace becomes temporary. When you build it on awareness, peace becomes stable. This is why Buddhist masters seem unshakable. They don't rely on the world to maintain their calm. Their calm comes from understanding the nature of the mind and training it to be steady regardless of external changes. Taking responsibility for your peace also means recognizing your role in your own suffering. If you get upset because someone didn't behave the way you wanted, the problem isn't their behavior, it's your expectation. If you feel hurt because someone didn't appreciate you, the wound isn't their lack of appreciation, it's your need for recognition. If you feel anxious because someone is distant, the discomfort isn't their distance, it's your fear of abandonment. This is not about blaming yourself. It's about seeing the truth clearly so you can actually free yourself. When you stop outsourcing your happiness, people no longer have the power to emotionally manipulate you, intentionally or unintentionally. They can no longer threaten to withdraw affection or attention in order to control you. They can no longer destabilize you by becoming cold or distant. They can no longer damage your sense of worth through their opinions or behavior. You become inwardly independent, not cold, not detached, but emotionally grounded. This inner grounding enhances every relationship you have. You communicate more calmly. You set boundaries more clearly. You walk away from toxic dynamics more confidently. You love people without collapsing into them. You support them without trying to control them. You care about them without making them responsible for your emotional survival. You become someone who brings calm into relationships rather than someone who extracts calm from them. In Buddhism, emotional responsibility is a form of compassion. When you take responsibility for your peace, you prevent your unresolved pain from spilling onto others. You stop holding people hostage to your expectations. You stop reacting from wounds and start responding from awareness. You stop demanding perfection from imperfect human beings and start allowing them to be who they are. Ultimately, you realize that peace is not something you find, it is something you cultivate. It grows when you stop blaming others for your inner storms and start learning how to calm the storm yourself. And once you experience this, you see clearly that emotional independence is not about needing no one. It's about knowing that even when people come and go, your peace doesn't have to follow them. 5. The fifth lesson, love without attachment. Most people enter relationships believing they are loving someone, but what they call love is often a mix of desire, fear, attachment, and unconscious expectations. Buddhism makes a sharp distinction between love and attachment, and this distinction is one of the most important you will ever learn if you want real peace. Love is open, spacious, and freeing. Attachment is tight, tense, and suffocating. Love says, "I care for you deeply." Attachment says, I need you to behave in a way that keeps me emotionally comfortable. Love allows people to be who they are. Attachment tries to mold them into what you want. And this is why so many relationships collapse. They are built on dependency, not understanding. Buddhism teaches that attachment turns relationships into traps. When you attach to someone, you start expecting them to fulfill your needs, heal your wounds, protect your insecurities, and reassure you every time your emotions wobble. You unconsciously build a mental checklist of how they should talk, behave, respond, support, comfort, and show love. Then you judge your own worth and their value to you based on how well they meet this checklist. This is not love. It is emotional control disguised as affection. Attachment also creates fear. Fear of losing the person, fear of being replaced, fear of being misunderstood, fear of not being enough, fear of them changing, fear of the relationship evolving in ways you didn't expect, fear of them pulling away. When fear enters a relationship, the mind shifts from appreciation to possession. You don't want to enjoy the person, you want to hold on to them. You want to freeze them in time so your emotional world feels secure. But no relationship survives when someone is trying to hold the other person captive. Love, in the Buddhist sense, has space. It is a love that appreciates the presence of another without grasping at them. It is a love that cares deeply but doesn't collapse when the other person is not available. It is a love that is generous instead of demanding, patient instead of insecure, present instead of anxious. This kind of love is only possible when you stop needing someone to complete you. When you remove the psychological craving underneath your love, the relationship becomes lighter and healthier. The Buddha described 4 qualities of true love: kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity. Attachment destroys all 4. When you are attached, your kindness becomes conditional, your compassion becomes selective, your joy turns into anxiety, and your equanimity disappears completely. Suddenly, your emotional stability depends on how the other person behaves. If they validate you, you feel warm. If they withdraw, you feel threatened. If they are attentive, you feel secure. If they are busy, you feel abandoned. Love is no longer love, it is a nervous system reaction. The irony is that the more attached you are, the less love you actually feel. Attachment narrows your heart. It makes you self-centered because the relationship becomes about what you get, not what you give. You begin to monitor the other person's every move and emotion, calculating how it reflects on your value. You take things personally that have nothing to do with you. Their mood becomes your mood. Their silence becomes your suffering. Their distance becomes your panic. Their flaws become threats. And all of this is happening inside you not because of the other person, but because of the expectations and fears that attachment creates. Buddhist love is different. It says, I love you, but I do not require you to behave a certain way in order for me to be at peace. This does not mean you tolerate disrespect or harm. It means your emotional well-being is not dependent on another person's choices. You can love someone deeply and still remain steady within yourself. You can be close to someone without attaching your identity to them. You can appreciate someone without turning them into your emotional source of survival. When you love without attachment, you give the other person room to be imperfect. You allow them to have their moods, their off days, their changes, and their personal journeys without making everything about you. You don't suffocate them with expectations. You don't panic when the relationship shifts. You don't demand constant proof of love because you know love isn't measured through obsessive reassurance. Instead, you communicate clearly, you show care genuinely, and you let the connection evolve naturally. Non-attached love also protects you. When someone pulls back, you don't chase them from a place of desperation. When someone is distant, your inner world doesn't collapse. When someone chooses a different path, your self-worth doesn't shatter. You remain grounded because your sense of identity is not built on being wanted by another person. You choose love, but you don't clutch it. You enjoy the presence of others, but you don't depend on it. One of the most profound insights Buddhism offers is this: love strengthens relationships, but attachment weakens them. When you are attached, you create pressure, tension, and emotional instability. The other person begins to feel suffocated, observed, or responsible for your every emotion. They feel like they cannot breathe, because your peace depends on their constant performance. This drives a wedge into the relationship. But when you love without attachment, the relationship becomes a place of safety rather than pressure. You are not demanding, you are not suffocating, you are not manipulating, you are not clinging. Instead, you are present, calm, and supportive. People feel more safe around someone who does not need them to be a certain way. They open up more. They relax. They trust. They stop performing and start being real. This is why non-attached love creates stronger bonds. It brings out authenticity in both people. Ultimately, loving without attachment is not about being emotionally detached or cold. It is about loving with clarity instead of fear. When you stop needing people to fill your emptiness, you start loving them from a place of fullness. You love because you choose to, not because you cannot survive without them. You care deeply, but your inner peace remains your own. You give love freely, but you do not sacrifice your sanity to maintain it. This is the essence of Buddhist love: to hold someone in your heart without holding them hostage in your mind. It is the power of appreciating someone deeply while remaining rooted in your own inner peace. And once you experience this kind of love, you stop mistaking attachment for affection ever again. 6. The sixth lesson: your worth is not determined by others. One of the most painful illusions the mind creates is the belief that our worth depends on how others perceive us. Most people walk through life as if they are holding a fragile identity that must constantly be protected, validated, approved, admired, or recognized by someone else. They fear being ignored, rejected, replaced, criticized, or overlooked because they believe these experiences decrease their value. Buddhism cuts through this illusion with incredible clarity. Your worth is inherent, not assigned. It exists by nature, not by permission. It is something you realize, not something others give to you. The problem is that the untrained mind ties identity to external responses. If people appreciate you, you feel valuable. If they criticize you, you feel inadequate. If someone chooses you, you feel worthy. If they discard you, you feel unworthy. You end up living in a psychological economy where other people's opinions become the currency that measures your self-esteem. This makes your sense of worth unstable because it rises and falls with every shift in someone else's mood or attention. From a Buddhist perspective, this is a form of self-created suffering. When you base your worth on external validation, you become emotionally dependent on forces you cannot control. People's perceptions are shaped by their own pain, biases, conditioning, insecurities, projections, misunderstandings, and temporary emotional states. Their opinions are reflections of their inner world, not reliable measurements of your value. Yet the mind convinces you that these opinions determine who you are. This is why Buddhist teachings emphasize the importance of understanding the nature of perception itself. People don't see you as you are. They see you through the lens of their experiences. Some will admire you for qualities they value. Some will reject you for qualities they fear. Some will love you for the comfort you give them. Some will dislike you for the truths you reveal in them. Their view of you is never truly about you. When you realize this deeply, the spell breaks. You stop trying to manage other people's judgments and start focusing on your own understanding. The Buddha taught that true worth comes from one thing only: the clarity and quality of your own mind. Not your social status, not your popularity, not your attractiveness, not your relationships, not your achievements, not your reputation. These things are temporary and unstable. They rise and fall like waves. Your worth, however, is rooted in your awareness, your intentions, your actions, and the state of your consciousness. It is internal, not external. The moment you recognize this, something powerful shifts. You stop chasing validation. You stop needing others to praise you so you can feel confident. You stop fearing criticism because it no longer threatens your identity. You stop panicking when someone withdraws because their distance is no longer interpreted as proof of your inadequacy. Your emotional world becomes more stable because it is no longer controlled by people who cannot even control themselves. One of the biggest traps in life is believing that someone else's acceptance is a reward and their rejection is a punishment. This mindset forces you to perform, please, and reshape yourself to fit others' expectations. But this isn't self-growth, it's self-abandonment. You become disconnected from your true values because you're too busy trying to meet the standards of people who often don't even know what they want. Buddhism teaches that this kind of self-betrayal leads to deep suffering because you disconnect from your authentic nature. When you detach from external validation, you reclaim your sense of identity. You start asking more honest questions. Who am I when nobody is watching? What do I value? What do I truly want? What principles do I stand for? What comfort have I been trading for approval? What part of myself have I been hiding to avoid judgment? These questions pull you back into your own center, where real worth is cultivated. Emotional independence grows when you understand that praise and blame are both unreliable. Praise feels good but becomes addictive. Blame feels painful but becomes clarifying. In Buddhism, both are distractions if they influence your sense of self. When you no longer rely on praise to feel valid, your self-esteem becomes solid. When you no longer fear blame, your courage becomes stronger. You stop living as a reflection of others' expectations and start living as a reflection of your own awakened understanding. Another layer of this lesson is compassion toward yourself. Many people amplify their suffering by harshly judging themselves through imagined standards they think others expect. They believe they must always be impressive, attractive, successful, or lovable to be worthy. They internalize unrealistic cultural ideals and punish themselves for not meeting them. Buddhism gently but firmly dismantles this illusion. Worth is not something you earn by becoming extraordinary. It is something you uncover by becoming aware. Worth comes from self-honesty. Worth comes from understanding your mind. Worth comes from living with intention rather than impulse. Worth comes from kindness, clarity, discipline, patience, and authenticity. Worth comes from awakening to your own nature and recognizing that you do not need to be validated because you already exist in a state of inherent value. You are already enough, not in a motivational sense, but in a structural, existential sense. When you internalize this truth, relationships become healthier. You stop entering them to fill emotional gaps. You stop needing constant reassurance. You stop clinging to people who treat you poorly because you no longer believe mistreatment is all you deserve. You stop tolerating disrespect because your standards come from within. You stop fearing losing people because you no longer confuse their presence with your worth. You interact from fullness, not emptiness, from clarity, not insecurity. You also become more compassionate toward others because you understand that their reactions are about their own internal battles. Your stability helps them become stable. Your groundedness creates safety. Your self-worth inspires theirs. In this way, your independence contributes to healthier, more authentic connections. Ultimately, this lesson teaches you that freedom begins when you stop outsourcing your value to people who are just as uncertain, insecure, and imperfect as you are. Your worth is not a negotiation. It is not a reward. It is not a reflection of someone's preference. It is your birthright, rooted in awareness itself. And once you understand this, your life becomes far less fragile, because the one thing that can no longer be taken from you is your sense of who you are. 7. The seventh lesson: freedom comes from letting go, not holding on. One of the most misunderstood ideas in life is the belief that freedom comes from gaining more love, more validation, more attention, more control, more certainty, more people around you. But Buddhism reveals a truth that most people avoid because it challenges everything they were taught. Real freedom is not about holding on, it is about letting go. This idea sounds simple, but its implications are profound. The more tightly you cling to people, outcomes, expectations, identities, and emotional comforts, the more trapped you become inside your own mind. And the more you release your grip, the more space you create for peace, clarity, and inner stability. Most suffering begins from resistance, resisting change, resisting loss, resisting uncertainty, resisting the natural flow of life. When you hold on to someone out of fear, you begin to suffocate both yourself and the relationship. When you cling to how things should be, you become blind to how things actually are. When you attach to a fixed identity, you block growth. When you refuse to let go of expectations, you guarantee disappointment. The Buddha taught that all things are impermanent, flowing, shifting, dissolving, and reforming. When you try to freeze life in place, you create tension inside yourself because you are fighting a force you cannot control, the nature of existence. Letting go is not abandonment. It is not coldness. It is not detachment in the emotional numbness sense. It is clarity. It is understanding what is within your control and what is not. It is recognizing that people have their own journeys, their own wounds, their own timing, their own lessons, and their own inner worlds that you cannot manage. You let go not because you want to lose them, but because you want to stop losing yourself. You stop trying to control how someone feels about you. You stop trying to force relationships into shapes they no longer fit. You stop gripping so tightly that your fear becomes the very thing that pushes people away. Letting go is an act of maturity. It means you acknowledge that everything in life has its own life cycle, beginnings, middles, and endings. Relationships evolve. People outgrow old versions of themselves. Priorities change. Emotional needs shift. Life paths diverge. When you cling out of fear, you fight these natural transitions and create suffering for both sides. The fear of letting go is almost always the fear of facing yourself. People cling to others because they hope that attachment will shield them from loneliness, insecurity, or emotional uncertainty. But this is an illusion. When you depend on someone to stabilize your inner world, you place your peace in fragile hands. Buddhism teaches that letting go restores your power. It returns your peace to its rightful place within your own awareness. When you let go of the belief that someone must stay for you to be okay, your anxiety dissolves. When you let go of the idea that your happiness depends on how someone treats you, you regain emotional independence. When you let go of outcomes you cannot control, you begin to relax into life instead of fighting it. When you let go of the stories your mind creates, you stop reacting to illusions. When you let go of people out of respect for them and for yourself, you stop forcing what is no longer aligned. Letting go also gives you the ability to love more deeply. When you stop trying to possess someone, you give them space to breathe, to grow, and to be themselves without fear of disappointing you. Relationships flourish when there is space instead of pressure. People feel freer, safer, and more authentic around someone who doesn't cling to them for emotional survival. Paradoxically, the more you let go, the more genuine connection becomes. You are no longer driven by fear or insecurity, but by presence and appreciation. There is also an internal dimension to letting go. You must let go of the parts of yourself that are keeping you stuck, the old stories, the wounds you replay, the interpretations you never questioned, the insecurities you've been feeding, the guilt you carry, and the perfection you demand of yourself. Many people hold on to their pain because it's familiar. The idea of living without it feels too unfamiliar. But if you do not let go of the past quietly becomes your future. When you release your grip on old emotions, you create space for inner healing. When you let go of who you think you should be, you create space to discover who you truly are. Letting go also means allowing impermanence to be your teacher. Everything changes: your emotions, your relationships, your roles, your body, your priorities, your circumstances. When you accept impermanence instead of resisting it, you stop creating unnecessary suffering. You stop expecting permanent behavior from temporary beings. You stop demanding stability from things that naturally move. You stop placing your happiness in conditions that are beyond your control. Impermanence is not a threat. It is the reason growth is possible. One of the most transformative insights in Buddhism is that letting go does not take away anything essential. It only removes what was blocking your path. You do not lose love by letting go. You lose fear. You do not lose connection. You lose attachment. You do not lose people. You lose the illusion that they must stay in order for you to be okay. What remains after letting go is more real, more grounded, and more peaceful than anything created through grasping. Freedom is not achieved by tightening your grip. It is achieved by loosening it. When you stop holding on so desperately, you finally have room to breathe. You begin to see clearly. You begin to feel lighter. You begin to respond instead of react. You begin to love without fear and connect without losing yourself. Letting go gives you the emotional spaciousness to live without the constant pressure of expectations, demands, and insecurities. And ultimately, letting go leads you back to the truth that Buddhism has emphasized for centuries. The greatest freedom is the freedom from your own attachments. When you release what you cannot control, your mind settles. When you stop trying to force reality into your preferences, your suffering fades. When you let go of needing people to complete you, you return to the quiet strength of your own awareness. And when you truly understand this, you see that the life you were trying to create through clinging is the life that appears naturally when you finally let go. When you look back at all 7 lessons, a single truth becomes undeniable. Most of your suffering never came from people themselves. It came from your attachment to them, your craving for comfort, your fear of solitude, your outsourcing of peace, your confusion between love and possession, your dependence on validation, and your resistance to letting go. These patterns weren't your fault. They were habits created by an untrained mind trying to feel safe in an unstable world. But Buddhism shows that you don't have to keep living inside these patterns. You are capable of a deeper, more grounded kind of happiness, one that does not collapse every time someone leaves, changes, misunderstands you, or fails to meet your expectations. Throughout these lessons, you've seen that emotional independence is not coldness, isolation, or indifference. It's clarity. It's understanding where your peace truly comes from. It is knowing that your inner stability is not something someone else can give or take. You learn to recognize attachment for what it is, a misunderstanding of where happiness resides. You begin to see craving as a signal to turn inward, not chase outward. You start valuing solitude as a tool for strength instead of a punishment. You take responsibility for your emotional climate instead of blaming others for storms they did not create. You shift from possessive love to spacious love, from dependence to appreciation, from insecurity to understanding. This shift in consciousness is not about pushing people away. It is about no longer losing yourself when people move closer or farther. When you no longer need others to complete you, you become capable of loving them more honestly. When you no longer rely on external validation, you become rooted in your own worth. When you no longer fear impermanence, you begin to live with openness instead of tension. And when you let go of expectations, you finally give yourself permission to breathe. Nothing in life becomes easier by clinging, but everything becomes clearer when you learn to release your grip. Letting go does not mean you stop caring. It means you stop suffering over what you cannot control. It means you stop trying to force reality to match the version you have in your mind. It means you allow relationships to evolve naturally, people to be human, emotions to come and go, and life to unfold without the weight of your resistance. The moment you stop needing people to fill your emptiness, you discover something transformative. The emptiness was never a flaw, it was space. Space for wisdom, space for reflection, space for peace, space for becoming the person your attachment once prevented you from being. You begin to recognize that you were never incomplete. You were simply disconnected from the calm, steady awareness beneath all the noise. And this awareness is where true freedom lives. You walk through life differently when your peace is no longer held hostage by circumstances or people. You become lighter, less reactive, less anxious, less defensive. You stop chasing what was never yours. You stop gripping what was always changing. You stop begging for validation from minds that struggle with their own doubts. You stop collapsing in the absence of reassurance. Instead, you move with a deeper sense of trust, trust in yourself, trust in the flow of life, and trust in the wisdom that grows when the mind finally begins to quiet. This is the life that begins the moment you stop needing people. Not a lonely life, not a cold life, a free life, a clear life, a peaceful life. A life where love becomes gentler because it is not rooted in fear. A life where relationships become healthier because they are not built on dependency. A life where solitude becomes nourishing instead of threatening. A life where you experience yourself not as someone who is lacking, but as someone who is becoming. The Buddha never promised a world without difficulty, but he showed that the mind can learn to walk through difficulty without collapsing under it. And that is the essence of everything you've learned. Happiness is not something others give you. It is something you cultivate through awareness, understanding, and the courage to let go. When you loosen your grip on the world loosens its grip on you. And life, for the first time, begins to feel spacious,